Well, good afternoon. Today we're going to be taking a look at task 4, prompt 2, and this is scored with rubric 17. We're talking about the EdTPA, Analyzing Student Learning, and I'm Mamaw Yates. I hope you've been following along on this wonderful journey of EdTPA. And if you don't think you have a task 4, it's a good chance you don't, because task 4 is not something that everybody has to do. It is actually just for those candidates who are doing elementary 18 rubrics. So let's get started. All righty. All right, so far we have already looked, I have an overview for the whole task 4, and if once you've gotten to this part in when you're working on prompt 2, you will have already described your class with your context for learning, described your learning segment with the little template that's included, and you would have developed an assessment and evaluation criteria, which those are Part C and Part D of the artifacts. And in task 4, prompt 1, you would have analyzed the whole class to find areas of struggle. Now, where we are right now is here, and we are looking at the work samples that you collected from 3 focus students who represent an area of struggle. Okay, so with this, like we've just said, you will have already developed your formative assessment, which should have included the conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and mathematical reasoning or problem solving. You would have submitted a blank copy of this chosen formative assessment, which is your artifact part C. You would have defined your evaluation criteria, which is your artifact part D. And that evaluation criteria is for the mathematics chosen formative assessment. And so all of that is completed when you finish prompt 1 of analyzing whole class learning. Now, you will have collected your student work, and now you need to go through and select 3 work samples that demonstrate an area of struggle in your analysis. And you're going to now further analyze these work samples to show errors or misconceptions that are related to that struggle. So basically what you've done so far is you've looked at the whole class, you found some common areas of struggle, and now you've found 3 work samples that represent that. And you're going to go into a deeper analysis with those work samples. Now, this is part E, and you're going to name these work samples Part E, Student Mathematics Work Sample. They can be written work samples, which they probably will be, but they might not be. They can also be audio work samples or video work samples. You have to have 3 of each. That means that each student's going to have their own file. This is very similar to how it's done, of course, for task 3. And then for the written work samples, you want to remove the student's name and your name and any other identifying marks and scan those or somehow make them into one of these document files here. Now, you're going to name these files Student 1 Mathematics Work Sample, Student 2 Mathematics Work Sample. Now they say that, and this is so that when it comes time for you to upload into Pearson, you will be able to discern which of the work samples, because there's 2 sets of work samples for task 4. Now, let's say that you have a video and it's of a group of students, and it could be your 3 focus students in a group, and they're all 3, all of your work samples are together in that one video, right? Well, you need to upload that video work sample separately for each focus student. And then you would describe how to recognize each focus student. And then, so that's very important. So if you have a video that's got all 3 students with their work samples on it, you need to follow these directions that are right here. Okay. And then you are going to submit those. If you have trouble with understanding the students, there's some directions here about transcribing. Okay. Next we have, this is how you will label your work samples. Focus student 1, focus student 2, and focus student 3. This is a sample from my friend Nikki, who has the EdTPA group, EdTPA All Day. She does a fantastic job of supporting candidates. Okay, so this is where you are now. This is your prompt. Analyzing student learning, 3 focus student. And it really gives you directions. It says, from your analysis of the whole class learning, identify one area where the students struggle mathematically. Select 3 student work samples that represent that struggle. And these are going to be your focus students. At least one of the focus students should have a specific learning need. Now, it doesn't have to be IEP or 504. It can also be an English language learner, a struggling reader, an underperforming student, someone who seems to have academic gaps. Maybe they have academic gaps because they've been going to a different school, or they missed several days from being sick. There's lots of reasons. It can even be a gifted student that needs greater challenge. And then you're going to submit the work samples, and like I showed you before, and it's important to note that you're going to have to at some point indicate how the files are, and we'll look at that in a minute. So this is just a very straightforward question. Which are you going to give? Work samples and document files, audio files, or video files? This is the major question because it asks you to analyze, and it's this question, part 2B, we'll be focusing on because it's the one that actually is going to have the biggest impact on your scoring for Rubric 17. And then 2C is just really, if you did have a video work sample, then describe how the score can identify the focus students, like you might say. Focus student 1 is sitting on the right, and focus student 3 is sitting on the left, and focus student 2 is sitting in the middle, for example. This is Rubric 17, and it's pretty straightforward. Again, scores always start with level 3, and this is where they begin. They look to see if you used evidence from the 3 focus student work samples to identify the specific student struggles. And those struggles would be like errors, confusions, or partial understandings. Now, this is important because using evidence and clearly identifying, as you can see, they got this wrong. You can look at the work sample and see it, and you describe it. If you have a loose connection, then that's going to be a 2. So if they don't feel like you've used evidence from the work samples, you're not going to get a 3. And that's just all there is to it. They're going to look down here and decide then if you should get a 1 or a 2. And so you don't want that to happen, do you? So if your work samples are loosely connected to student struggles, you're going to get a 2. If you get a 3, you have used evidence and your work samples identify these struggles, then the score will look to see, did you go beyond just identifying the specific struggles? Did you explain them? So if you used evidence from the work samples to explain the struggles, which are again the errors, confusions, partial understandings, perhaps misconceptions, then explaining them and relating them also to those mathematical understandings, mathematical concepts. If you got off of 4 and you also had explicit connections um, with mathematical understandings and misconceptions, you might get a 5. 5s on Rubric 17 are pretty rare. So stick with trying to get the 3. You should be able to get a 4 here if you've got good explanation related to your evidence. Anytime you don't understand a rubric very well, you should pull out your URLP, Understanding Rubric Level Progressions. You'll see that this does explain that the guiding question is using the 3 work samples to describe the struggles in a particular area of math understanding. They define struggles, and they tell us here that the primary source of evidence is prompt 2 and the work samples themselves. So what are these mathematical understandings? We go through this a lot. And as I've said in previous clips, I'm not a mathematics expert. I'm not a math teacher. I was an originally trained as an elementary teacher, and so I know how to teach elementary math. But so if you're looking for a complex definition, you're not going to get that from me. But I can give you some practical advice about these mathematical understandings. So basically, what this means is that if you've got conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and mathematical reasoning and problem solving. So, for example, if you were teaching addition, you would make sure that the students understood the concept of putting one set with another set and combining, and then finding out how much it was together. That's the concept of addition, putting things together and counting the whole group. Procedural fluency would be a way to giving them a strategy to solving the problems very quickly and easily. And the more quickly they do that, they get into understanding algorithms, which, of course, would be how you express it in numbers. Mathematical reasoning is their ability to understand, for example, that if they accidentally put in wrong numbers and got a crazy answer, it couldn't possibly be right. So then they can visualize that 2 plus 2 can't equal 22. So, and problem solving, of course, would be putting your concepts and your procedures together in order to be able to solve problems in real life. So let's take again a look at this rubric again. You want to make sure that you're using evidence from the 3 focus students to identify the specific learning samples. Avoid loose connections to the struggles. Make sure you identify, name it. I mean, this is the struggle. This is the error confusion. Make sure you're very specific. You want to make sure you explain it. Don't just say this is where they did that, as you can see by looking at the work sample, and talk about what the student wrote and talk about how it's an error or a confusion, partial understanding. And then, of course, going into more explicit connections and making connections with mathematical understandings and misconceptions can help you score even better. So evidence that demonstrates performance at a level 3 would be using examples. So you always want to go to the work sample and say, look at student A's work and see where he did this. Identifying the specific struggle, the error, the confusion, the partial understanding. Analyzing the mathematical understanding that's related to it. So, for example, um, if it was a procedural thing, did they get the problem wrong because they didn't understand how to do the procedure, or are they misunderstanding the concept altogether? And if you believe they've misunderstood the concept, what makes you think that? So you want to make sure that you are clearly identifying it in terms of it being a mathematical error, confusion, and partial understanding. So it becomes important that you use these terms here. And that brings us to, here's an example that's in the URLP. And one of the things I want to always point out about these examples in the URLP, they're good examples, but the problem is that they're way too short. In in reality, if you wrote a response this short, it would not get you the score you're wanting. So that doesn't quite seem fair, but you need to look at it and realize, okay, this is like a minimum I should do. So the lesson specifically focused on helping students add 3 one-digit numbers. So it talks here, when asked to add the 3 digits in the column, the 3 focus students struggled to find 2 numbers that made 10. So they talk about the struggle. This shows students' lack of understanding of the associative property. So what's the mathematical concept being missed here? And then they explain, rather than circling the numbers, they added the numbers. So you can see that there's quite a bit of explanation about what's been observed, your analysis of that. This shows only a partial understanding and of being able to read and interpret a word problem. Okay, going forward. Here's a word bank. I recommend using these terms. Now pull these from your rubric and from the URLP. I would use terms like struggle, specific struggle, mathematical error, confusion, partial understanding. You should be referring to student A, B, and C, the term related to, mathematical understandings, conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, mathematical reasoning, problem solving. These are all terms that should be seen. And looking at work sample for student A is a sentence stem that might be useful to you. Okay. So let's take a look now a little more in depth at the prompt. Here you've got 2A, and 2A asks that you, um, in what form did you submit the work samples for Focus Student 3? And actually on the actual template, it says in what form did you submit the work samples, and it says delete choices. So you actually are going to do that. I know we say don't mess with the template. Well, you will mess with the template if they tell you to, right? So this says delete choices. This is a common question. Oh no, it says delete choices. Am I going to get a condition code for deleting choices? No, you're not. Chill. Okay, written work samples, audio files, video files, whatever you did. Uh, Here, this is from Nikki's. She submitted written work samples and text files, so she deleted the other two. I wish that when they did this, they put this as letter B because they really go together. Because here, if you have a video or audio file, you want to provide the name of the clip and clearly describe how the scorer can identify the focus students and whose work is being portrayed. So if you used a video clip for your work sample, make sure that you do that. And you can see here in that if you don't have a video work sample, then this does not apply to you. You can just write does not apply. If you do, then answering the question won't be very difficult. So we're going to focus on 2B. Analyze 3 student work samples and describe the student struggles as they relate to the underlying mathematical understanding or concept. Cite specific evidence from the work samples in relation to mathematical errors, confusions, partial understandings. So the overriding thing you need to think about, always pay attention to what they've got here that's highlighted. What do the students' errors tell you about their mathematical understanding? That's what we're getting at here. For example, if a student error occurs in a subtraction problem, then the underlying mathematical understanding might be regrouping, just understanding what subtraction is, um, or maybe not understanding that subtraction is an inverse of addition. What do you think is the underlying problem? And then from that, this is going to become the basis of your targeted learning objective or goal that you're going to use um, next in your re-engagement lesson. So really what you're doing is that you're building up, you've looked at your whole class now and found a common struggle. Now you're looking at the 3 work samples and you're diving into those struggles a little bit more analytically. And now you're going to make a conclusion about what a targeted learning objective. So if I found that my students really had a misconception about subtraction, that's what I got to by analyzing this work, then my re-engagement next lecture, my re-engagement lesson. Okay, I'm just going to say that is a lousy thing to call a lesson. Re-engagement lesson. That's just, I'm sorry. I don't know who thought of that, but hate it. Um, I would never say that. Okay, this is how you write that. I'll get off my soapbox. Introductory paragraph. So it's good to just kind of start out with talking about the overall discussion of the struggle. So just kind of overall, because you did get here by identifying, a common struggle or two in the whole class analysis. So we're focusing on student A, B, and C. So you're just going to write a generalized paragraph about the errors, confusions, partial understandings, or misconceptions that you saw in the work of these focus students. Then you're going to start analyzing each student's work separately. So start with student A, give specific examples of the errors, confusions, and partial understandings. Explain how the struggles are related to conceptual understanding. And it's important to do conceptual understanding because if you look at this rubric, that's integral. And you want to defend this analysis. So why do you say that? Don't just say what concepts this is related to. Why do you say that? How the struggle, describe how the struggle with conceptual understanding relates to procedural fluency, or you can relate it to mathematical reasoning or problem solving. Then you're going to do that for each of the other work samples. You're going to do it for student B, same thing, and then again for student C. So far you've got 4 paragraphs. Now we're going to do a 5th paragraph. And this is going to be a concluding paragraph where you're going to just start discussing now the similarities or the common struggles, the common misunderstandings, the common misconceptions between these focus students. So you want to make sure you support with examples. So identify one common struggle that's now going to become your targeted learning goal. So remember, this is where all this has been going all along, is to get to this targeted learning goal. And for this re-engagement lesson, then relate it to a mathematical understanding. Explain why it's related to that mathematical understanding. Why do you think they're having trouble with the associative property? Why do you think they're having trouble with regrouping? Then discuss how this struggle has a broader impact on other mathematical understandings. Then you're going to kind of bring it home. You want to bring it home. So you've been leading up to talking about this targeted learning objective. So now just go ahead and introduce it. The targeted objective goal of my re-engagement lesson will be, and this is going to help students, da da da. Okay. Now, here's Nikki's work. And Nikki is so awesome to let me use her stuff. Thank you, Nikki. You can see she didn't follow, I didn't have all this when she was writing hers. And it was interesting because I went and looked at what she did after I had come up with these outlines. But she did basically what I described. Um, what she did, she started out with an introduction where she identified the common struggle. She discussed the errors. She connected conceptual understanding to problem solving. You can see she's very clear about talking about the struggle and the evidence. Um, then let me get back down here. Then she gets into this part here where she's talking more about the individual students, student 1, 2, 3, or student A, B, C, whatever you want to call them. She didn't do the final paragraph like I'm suggesting, but what she did was good, and she scored well and was proficient. And you are going to too. You're going to get there, I promise. You're almost there. This is rubric 17. And then after this, all you have to do is that you have to write prompt 3 and 4. Prompt 3, it's so easy. You could do that in your sleep. And prompt 4 really is the only thing you've got left. So the next time I see you, we'll be talking about prompt 4. I hope you have a great day.